The grand hall of the Galactic Summit shimmered with golden light as the high ceilings reflected the soft glow of alien crystals embedded in the walls. Hundreds of alien delegates from across the galaxy filled the enormous chamber, their colorful robes and ceremonial armor adding a dazzling array of colors to the already vibrant surroundings. The hum of conversation, both verbal and telepathic, echoed through the hall as species from 100 worlds exchanged polite greetings and cautious glances. At the center of it all stood Princess Silara, tall and regal, her silvery skin shimmering under the soft lights. Her piercing violet eyes scanned the room with practiced arrogance as she adjusted the golden circlet resting on her forehead. Behind her, a contingent of elite guards from the Zerithian Empire stood at attention, their dark uniforms polished to perfection. Silara's gaze sharpened when a human delegation entered the hall. The humans were easy to spot, smaller, dressed in simple but functional black and gray uniforms, their expressions calm yet serious. Captain Ryan Cross led the group, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room with quiet confidence. He stood tall for a human, broad-shouldered and composed, his dark hair neatly combed back. His posture was relaxed but controlled, as though he was ready to act at a moment's notice. Silara's lips curled into a smirk. She leaned toward one of her advisors and whispered, "They look so fragile. How have they survived this long?" Her advisor chuckled softly, his scaled fingers tapping the armrest of his hovering chair. "Primitive luck, I imagine. Their reproductive system is so outdated it's a miracle they haven't gone extinct." Silara's gaze lingered on Ryan as he approached the central platform. A holographic display flickered to life above the gathering, showcasing a complex genetic structure, a human DNA strand, twisting and glowing with a soft blue light. Ryan stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back, as the human ambassador began speaking. "Our research into genetic engineering has allowed humanity to overcome many of the biological limitations we once faced," the ambassador explained. "Through controlled reproductive adaptation, we ensured the long-term survival and strength of our species. We are willing to share this technology with the Galactic Union as a gesture of peace and cooperation." A ripple of quiet laughter spread through the hall. Several alien delegates exchanged amused glances, their expressions varying from condescending to outright disbelief. Silara's smirk deepened. She stepped forward, her flowing silver robes trailing behind her as she ascended the platform with effortless grace. The soft hum of her heels, striking the crystal floor, echoed through the silent hall. "Impressive," she said, her tone sharp with sarcasm. "Humans wish to offer reproductive technology to the galaxy." Her violet eyes narrowed slightly. "How quaint." Ryan's gaze met hers, calm and unwavering. He didn't flinch under the weight of her stare. Silara circled him like a predator, her long, slender fingers tracing the edge of the holographic DNA strand. "You expect the mighty Zerithian Empire to adopt your biological methods." Her voice dripped with disdain. "Our species have evolved far beyond the need for such primitive reproduction. We've achieved genetic purity through selective adaptation and controlled cloning. Why would we stoop to such organic processes?" Ryan's expression remained unreadable. "Because nature adapts where cloning cannot," he said quietly. Silara laughed, the sound light and cold. "Nature is flawed. Evolution is messy and unpredictable. That's why your species remains vulnerable." Ryan took a measured step toward her, his gaze sharpened. "And yet humans have survived where others have not." The room fell deathly silent. Even the telepathic hum among the other species seemed to fade. Silara's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered. Her chin lifted in quiet superiority. "You survived because the galaxy has been merciful. Do not mistake tolerance for strength." Ryan's expression hardened. His jaw tightened. "Perhaps you're right," he said, "or perhaps you underestimate the resilience of humanity." Silara's violet eyes flashed dangerously. She took a step closer, her face inches from his. "If human biology is so superior," she said softly, "perhaps you should prove it." Ryan's gaze didn't waver. Careful, Princess. You might not like what you discover. Silara's eyes narrowed, but before she could reply, a new ripple of quiet laughter spread through the hall. One of the Zerithian advisors leaned toward Silara. It's almost tragic, he murmured. They still rely on such primitive means to reproduce. How embarrassing. Silara turned away from Ryan, her lips curling into a small, satisfied smile. Indeed, she said. Her gaze flicked back toward Ryan. I suppose it's fortunate for you that the galaxy tolerates weakness. Ryan's expression didn't change, but a flicker of steel entered his gaze. His mouth curved into a faint smile. Let's hope you never need that weakness to survive. For the first time, Silara hesitated. Her smile faded slightly, her eyes sharpening with the barest hint of uncertainty. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. She turned, her silver robe swirling behind her as she descended the platform and returned to her seat. Ryan watched her go, his eyes dark and thoughtful. His hand tightened into a fist at his side. Beside him, the human ambassador leaned toward him and whispered, "She's not going to listen." "She will," Ryan replied quietly. "Sooner or later, they all will." The summit resumed, but the tension in the air had shifted. The humans stood at the edge of the gathering, separate from the other delegates. Whispers and glances followed them, a mixture of amusement and mild disdain. Silara watched them from across the hall, her sharp eyes narrowing slightly. A faint whisper of doubt lingered beneath her confident exterior. Weakness, she reminded herself. Human weakness. But as Ryan's gaze met hers across the room, steady and unyielding, Silara felt the first thin crack in her certainty. And that unsettled her far more than she was willing to admit. The cold hum of the Zerithian palace's automated security systems echoed through the vast hallways. Pale blue light pulsed through the smooth metallic walls, casting an eerie glow across the dark, polished floors. Princess Silara walked through the corridor, her steps measured and calm, but her mind churned with restless energy. The summit had ended hours ago, but the echo of Ryan Cross's words still lingered in her thoughts. His calm certainty, the quiet confidence beneath his gaze, it unsettled her in a way she couldn't fully explain. She entered the command chamber, where the high-ranking Zerithian military officers were gathered around a massive holographic projection of the surrounding star systems. The soft glow of tactical data illuminated their faces as they analyzed the latest reports from the outer colonies. Silara's chief advisor, General Varric, stood at the front of the room, his reptilian features tense beneath his dark ceremonial armor. Varric turned toward her as she entered. His dark eyes gleamed beneath his heavy brow ridge. "Princess," he said, bowing slightly. "There's been an incident." Silara's gaze sharpened. What kind of incident? Varric flicked his clawed fingers toward the holographic map. A red pulse spread across the projection, centering on a distant outpost at the edge of Zerithian territory. A human colony ship was attacked near the Thalax Nebula, he said. Unknown hostiles. The ship managed to send out a distress signal before communications were lost. Silara's lips pressed into a thin line. Who would dare attack human territory? Varric's jaw tightened. The signal identified the attackers as the Krail Dominion. A ripple of quiet tension passed through the room. Even Silara felt the chill of that name. The Krail were one of the oldest and most feared factions in the galaxy, merciless predators who thrived on conquest and destruction. They rarely struck without overwhelming force, and if they were targeting human territory. Casualties? Silara asked. Unconfirmed, Varric replied. The human fleet is mobilizing, but they're stretched thin. The Krail are too fast. They'll reach the core systems within hours. Silara's eyes narrowed. The humans wouldn't survive a full-scale Krail assault. Their technology was impressive, but nothing compared to the sheer brutality and size of the Krail war machine. Her gaze drifted toward the glowing map. The red pulse marking the human colony ship flickered ominously. "We need to intervene," Silara said. Varric's expression darkened. "Princess, with all due respect, The humans are not part of the Zerithian Empire. They refused integration into the Galactic Union years ago. If we send military support, it could be seen as an act of aggression by the Krail. Silara's jaw tightened, and if we do nothing, humanity will be wiped out. Varric hesitated, then lowered his head. Yes, Princess. Silara's gaze sharpened. For a brief moment, Ryan's calm eyes flashed through her mind. His quiet certainty, his quiet strength. Despite their primitive biology, humans were resilient. And something about that resilience stirred a flicker of unease deep within her chest. They'll never survive alone, she murmured. Suddenly, a sharp pulse echoed through the chamber. The holographic map flickered, and a distorted transmission crackled to life above the central console. Static hissed through the speakers before a broken human voice pushed through. This is Captain Ryan Cross of the U.S. Vanguard. We're under attack. Multiple Krail warships closing in. Shields failing. Need immediate assistance. An explosion roared through the transmission, followed by the sharp hiss of decompression. The signal fractured, then went dead. Silara's heart clenched. A silence hung over the chamber as the Zerithian officers exchanged uneasy glances. Princess, Varric said carefully, the humans are not part of our alliance. We are under no obligation to assist them. Silara's gaze sharpened. We have an obligation to protect sentient life, she said coldly. Varric's jaw tightened. Your Highness, the Council will not approve military action. The Krail are too dangerous. We could be inviting war. Silara's eyes narrowed. And if we allow the Krail to destroy humanity without consequence, what happens when they turn toward us next? Varric's expression darkened. He said nothing. Silara's hands curled into fists at her sides. For centuries, the Zerithian Empire had maintained peace through strategic neutrality. Intervention in human affairs would shatter that fragile balance. But Ryan's voice echoed through her mind. His quiet strength, his certainty. She turned toward the console. Her silver robes shimmered beneath the cold blue lights. Prepare the fleet, she said. Varric's eyes widened. Princess. Silara's gaze was hard and cold. That's an order. Varric hesitated, then bowed his head. As you command. The chamber erupted into quiet motion as the officers began issuing rapid commands. The holographic map shifted, showing the swift deployment of Zerithian warships toward human territory. Silara's gaze lingered on the red pulse, marking Ryan's last known position. Her chest tightened. She had mocked humanity's weakness, their biology, their fragile nature. And yet, there was strength in that fragility, in their willingness to fight even when the odds were impossible. As the fleet mobilized, Silara turned toward the viewport at the far side of the chamber. Beyond the curved glass, the cold stretch of stars gleamed in the dark expanse. Somewhere out there, Ryan was fighting for survival. She whispered under her breath, "Don't die before I get there." Across the galaxy, the Krail war fleet descended upon the human colony ship. Jagged black hulls cut through the dark, their crimson energy signatures pulsing like veins of blood. Inside the UH Vanguard, alarms screamed through the ship's narrow corridors. The hull shuddered violently as another plasma strike tore through the port side. Ryan Cross braced himself against the console as the impact threw him against the cold metal floor. Blood trickled down the side of his face as he pulled himself upright. "Shields are down," one of the officers shouted. Ryan's gaze sharpened. His hands tightened into fists. "Fire plasma cannons. We're running out of power." Ryan's jaw tightened. He forced himself to stay calm, focused. Divert auxiliary power from life support. Keep those cannons firing. An explosion rocked the ship. Smoke filled the bridge. Ryan coughed, forcing himself to stay upright as sparks rained down from the ceiling. The Krail warships loomed closer, their weapons charging for a final strike. Ryan's heart hammered. His eyes narrowed. He wasn't going to die like this, not without a fight. Suddenly, the space beyond the viewport shimmered with pale blue light. A ripple of distortion spread through the void. And then, the Zerithian war fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a flash of white-blue light. Sleek silver hulls gleamed beneath the starlight as the first line of Zerithian warships opened fire. Plasma bolts tore through the Krail's front line, sending dark debris scattering into the void. Ryan's breath hitched. His eyes widened. "What the hell?" one of the officers whispered. Ryan's gaze sharpened. A single transmission crackled through the comms. "This is Princess Silara of the Zerithian Empire." Her voice echoed through the bridge, cold and sharp. "Stand down or be destroyed." Ryan's lips curled into a small smile. "About damn time," he whispered. Ryan Cross sat in the dimly lit medical bay of the UH Vanguard, his arm wrapped in a white bandage. Dried blood crusted at the edge of his temple, and a dull ache throbbed through his skull. He winced as the ship's medic pressed a small device to his forehead, the cold sting of disinfectant biting into his skin. "You'll live," the medic said, her tone flat. "Just try not to get your head blown off next time." Ryan smirked weakly. No promises. The doors to the med bay hissed open. A wave of tension swept through the room as Princess Silara stepped inside, her silver and blue robes flowing behind her. Her tall, slender figure seemed to radiate cold authority, her pale violet eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. Behind her, two Zerithian guards stood at attention, their black armor gleaming beneath the soft overhead lights. Ryan's gaze narrowed. "To what do I owe the honor?" Silara's expression was impassive. "You're welcome for the rescue." Ryan chuckled, ignoring the pain in his ribs. "I didn't realize we were keeping score." Silara's eyes flashed. Humans have a strange way of showing gratitude. Ryan stood slowly, testing his balance. His muscles ached from the brutal battle, but he forced himself to stand tall. His brown eyes met Silara's unflinchingly. "You saved us. Thank you." Silara's gaze softened, but only for a fraction of a second. "Don't thank me yet. There's a reason I came here." Ryan frowned. "Let me guess. The Zerithian Council isn't happy about you saving a bunch of lowly humans." Silara's lips tightened. "They've already summoned me back to the capital for questioning. Intervention in human affairs was not sanctioned." Ryan's eyes sharpened. "So why'd you do it?" For a moment, Silara hesitated. Her gaze drifted toward the floor. "Because I saw something in you," she said quietly. "In humanity." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Careful, Princess." That almost sounded like respect. Silara's mouth twitched into something that almost resembled a smile, but it was gone just as quickly. "The Krail will strike again," Silara said. "Their fleets are already mobilizing beyond the outer systems. This wasn't an isolated attack. It was a test." Ryan's jaw tightened, and humanity failed it. Silara's gaze sharpened, not entirely. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" Silara stepped closer until she was barely a breath away. "I'm offering you a chance to survive." Ryan's brow furrowed. "Meaning?" Silara's violet eyes gleamed beneath the cold light. "The Zerithian Empire is prepared to offer humanity an alliance. Military support, technology, tactical assistance." Ryan's eyes widened. You want to fight alongside us?" Silara's gaze hardened. "I want to give humanity a chance to fight back." Ryan studied her face, searching for some hidden motive. "And what does the Zerithian Empire want in return?" Silara's expression remained unreadable. "We want to understand humanity. Your strength. Your resilience." Ryan frowned. "And why the sudden interest?" Silara's jaw tightened. "Because the Krail have never feared a species before. But they fear you." Ryan scoffed. "They just nearly wiped us off the map. And yet you survived." Silara said, "You fought back, despite your inferior technology, despite the odds. The Krail operate on dominance and fear. They crush weaker species without hesitation. But when they attacked you, they hesitated, Ryan finished. His eyes darkened. Why? Silara's gaze sharpened. That's what the Council wants to know. But I believe it's more than just strategy. It's something in your biology, your adaptability, your capacity for survival. The Krail have studied you. They know you're dangerous. Ryan's lips twisted into a hard smile. So now the Zerithian Empire wants to get in on the action. Call it a strategic partnership, Silara said. Ryan crossed his arms, wincing slightly as the motion pulled at his injured ribs. And what happens when the war ends? If humanity survives, if we win, what happens then? Silara's gaze darkened. We'll deal with that problem when it comes. Ryan's eyes narrowed. He didn't trust the Zerithians. Not fully, but humanity couldn't win this war alone. He had seen the Krail's brutality firsthand. Their technology was too advanced. Their fleets were too large. Humanity needed help, and Silara was offering it. Let me be clear, Ryan said. If humanity joins this alliance, we fight on our terms. We make the decisions about how our people live and die. No one owns us. Silara's gaze flashed with quiet amusement. Understood. Ryan's eyes remained hard. And if you betray us, if the Zerithian Empire decides humanity is more useful as a pawn than an ally. Silara's expression turned cold. Then you'll destroy us. Ryan's smile didn't reach his eyes. We'll die trying. A brief silence stretched between them. Then Silara extended her hand. Do we have an agreement, Captain Cross? Ryan's gaze lingered on her hand. Then he grasped it firmly. Looks like we do, Princess. Silara's lips curled into a small smile. Suddenly, the comm system flared to life. A frantic voice echoed through the room. Captain Cross, this is the bridge. Krail warships have entered the system. They're advancing toward the colony. Ryan's expression darkened. He released Silara's hand. How many? 4 heavy cruisers. They'll be in weapons range in less than 15 minutes. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Sound battle stations. He glanced toward Silara. I hope your fleet is ready. Silara's gaze hardened. It will be. Ryan moved toward the exit, his injured ribs protesting with each step. Silara followed beside him. As they reached the bridge, the viewport showed the dark stretch of space flickering with distant lights. Crimson pulses flared across the void as the Krail ships closed in. Ryan's hands curled into fists at his sides. Silara's gaze remained calm. Your orders, Captain. Ryan's eyes burned with quiet resolve. Weapons online. Target the lead ship. Captain, they outnumber us. Ryan's lips curled into a hard smile. Good. That'll make it interesting. Silara's eyes gleamed with quiet admiration. Perhaps there's more to human survival than biology after all. Ryan's gaze remained fixed on the approaching ships. Let's find out. Silara stood in the sterile, white-lit chamber of the Vanguard. The walls were lined with complex medical equipment, glowing softly with blue and white light. Holographic screens floated above the central operating table, displaying complex strands of human DNA and cellular structures. Silara's violet eyes narrowed as she studied the shifting patterns of human biology. Dr. Ellen Hayes, the ship's chief medical officer, stood across from her with a raised eyebrow. So, you're serious about this? Silara's gaze sharpened. I wouldn't be here otherwise. Ellen folded her arms. You do realize this is unprecedented, right? No non-human has ever attempted to integrate human reproductive traits before. The genetic differences alone. I understand the risks. Silara interrupted. Her voice was steady, cold. And I'm prepared to face them. Ellen sighed. All right. But you'll need a direct sample from a human donor. Genetic material can't just be synthesized for something this complex. Silara's gaze darkened. I know. Just then, the doors slid open. Ryan Cross stepped inside. His uniform slightly rumpled, and his jaw set in quiet determination. His eyes flicked toward the holoscreens, then toward Silara. "You sure about this?" Ryan asked, his tone even. Silara's gaze met his. "Yes." Ryan's brow furrowed. "You do understand what you're asking, right?" Silara's expression didn't waver. "This war will not be won through superior firepower alone. The Krail adapt. They evolve. If humanity has survived this long despite technological inferiority, it's because of something deeper, something biological." Ryan shook his head. "Human biology isn't a weapon." Silara stepped toward him. "It could be." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "And what if it kills you? Then at least I'll die knowing the truth." Ryan exhaled slowly. His gaze lingered on her for a moment longer before he extended his arm. "All right. Let's see how human you're willing to become." Ellen hesitated. "I'm really not comfortable with this." "Do it," Silara ordered. Ellen grimaced, but she moved toward the console, keying in a series of commands. A soft hum filled the room as the machinery activated. A fine silver needle extended from the wall, poised just above Ryan's arm. "You might feel a slight pinch," Ellen said. Ryan didn't flinch as the needle slid beneath his skin, a small vial filled with deep red liquid. The machine beeped softly, and the needle retracted. Ellen held up the vial. Human DNA, fresh from the source. Silara stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the vial, her hand extended toward it. Ellen hesitated, then placed the vial into Silara's palm. Silara studied it for a moment. "Begin the integration process." Ellen's eyes widened. Whoa, hold on. We haven't even done simulations. This isn't a controlled environment. There's no time for caution," Silara said sharply. Ryan frowned. "What exactly are you trying to accomplish?" Silara turned toward him. "The Krail are stronger, faster, more advanced, but they don't adapt the way humans do. Their strength is rigid, predictable. Humanity's strength lies in its chaos. Your species survives because you change. You grow." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "And you think you can copy that?" Silara's gaze darkened. "I intend to find out." Ellen sighed. "Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you." She keyed in another command. The table in the center of the room lowered slightly, and an array of fine surgical arms unfolded from the ceiling. Silara climbed onto the table, her silver-blue robes flowing around her as she lay down. Restraints clicked into place around her wrists and ankles. Ryan stepped closer. "Silara, you don't have to do this." Her violet eyes fixed on his. "Yes, I do." Ellen hesitated, her fingers poised over the console. "This could kill you." "Do it," Silara said quietly. Ryan's jaw tightened as Ellen pressed the final command. The surgical arms descended, a low hum vibrating through the room as the fine-tipped needles positioned themselves above Silara's exposed arm. A thin, clear line connected the vial of Ryan's blood to the machine. The fluid began to flow slowly through the system, dark red streaks curling through the transparent tubing. The machine beeped steadily as human DNA merged with Zerithian cells. Silara's eyes squeezed shut. Her body arched slightly as the first wave of cellular restructuring began. A tremor passed through her, and her breathing quickened. "Vitals are spiking," Ellen said sharply. "Her neural activity is off the charts." Silara's jaw clenched. A faint glow pulsed beneath her pale skin, the silver veins of her Zerithian physiology reacting violently to the foreign human DNA. Her body convulsed. Her breathing turned ragged. "Shut it down," Ryan barked. "No." Silara's eyes snapped open. Her gaze burned with violet fire. "It's working." Ellen's eyes widened. "Her cells, they're integrating." Silara gasped as the glow beneath her skin intensified. Her breathing hitched, then steadied. Her eyes fluttered open, and Ryan saw something strange beneath the violet irises. A ring of dark gold flickered faintly at the edges. "Her body's adapting," Ellen whispered. She's stabilizing. Silara's breathing evened out. The tension in her muscles eased. The glow beneath her skin faded into a soft shimmer. Ellen stared at the monitors in disbelief. I don't understand. The human and Zirithian DNA should have rejected each other. But instead, Ryan stepped toward the table. Silara. Silara's eyes opened. She sat up slowly, her gaze steady. When she spoke, her voice was different, smoother, stronger. I can feel it, she whispered. The human resilience, the adaptability. Ryan's gaze sharpened, and Silara's eyes gleamed. It worked. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the ship's comm system. Captain Cross, we've got incoming. 3 Krail destroyers just dropped out of warp. Ryan's gaze darkened. Damn it. He turned toward Silara. You up for a fight? Silara slid off the table. Her movements were fluid, too fluid. Strength radiated from her body in a way that seemed unnatural. Her eyes gleamed with dangerous light. I've never been more ready, she said. Ryan's smile was cold. Good. Let's see what humanity's newest weapon can do. Silara's gaze sharpened. You mean humanity's newest ally? Ryan's smile widened. We'll see. Silara stood at the edge of the command deck, her gaze fixed on the holographic display in front of her. 3 Krail destroyers loomed on the edges of the system, their massive black hulls outlined in menacing red light. The tactical grid pulsed with enemy signatures, closing in fast. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated beneath her feet, a constant reminder of the thin line separating survival from annihilation. Ryan Cross stood beside her, his arms crossed. His jaw was set, and a faint line of tension traced his brow. 3 destroyers, he muttered. We're outgunned. Silara's gaze didn't waver. Not for long. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Care to explain how exactly we're going to survive this? Silara's violet eyes flashed. The thin band of gold now circled the irises, evidence of the human DNA still coursing through her veins. I can feel it, she said. My body. It's different now. Stronger. Faster. Ryan frowned. What does that mean in practical terms? Silara's gaze sharpened. Give me a fighter. Ryan blinked. A fighter. I can feel the human instincts inside me, Silara said, her voice low. The adaptability. The aggression. The need to survive. You've survived countless wars because you don't fight with logic alone. You fight with instinct. Ryan's eyes darkened. And you think you can harness that? Silara's expression was cold. I know I can. Before Ryan could respond, the tactical display flickered. A bright red alert flashed across the screen. Enemy torpedoes inbound. Impact in 45 seconds. Captain, a voice called from the comm station. Shields at maximum, but they won't hold against 3 direct hits. Ryan's gaze snapped toward Silara. You still want that fighter? Silara's lips curled into a dangerous smile. Give me the damn ship. Ryan turned toward the deck officer. Prep the Viper. Full combat loadout. Sir, that's suicide. The officer protested. Ryan's eyes narrowed. You heard me. Silara turned and strode toward the hangar bay. Ryan followed closely, his steps quick and sharp. As they entered the launch area, the sleek black hull of the Viper-class starfighter stood waiting, its surface gleaming under the cold hangar lights. Are you sure about this? Ryan asked as Silara approached the cockpit. Silara's gaze didn't waver. I need to test this. If I can't fight like a human, then none of this means anything. Ryan exhaled slowly. Then don't die out there. Silara stepped toward the cockpit and climbed inside. The neural interface synced with her instantly. Her mind expanded into the ship's systems, and she felt the smooth hum of the Viper's power core beneath her. Launch sequence engaged. The hangar doors slid open, revealing the cold void of space beyond. Silara's hands gripped the controls as the ship detached from the docking clamps, and drifted forward. The stars spun around her as the Viper's engines flared to life. Her heart quickened. The Krail destroyers loomed ahead, their gun batteries swiveling into firing position. Silara's instincts screamed at her to evade, to flee, but the human DNA inside her pulsed with something different. A need to strike back, to survive. Enemy lock-on detected. "Come on," Silara whispered. "Let's see what this body can really do." A volley of plasma bolts streaked toward her. Silara's hands moved before her mind fully processed the threat. The Viper rolled to the side, cutting sharply through the enemy fire. Her reactions were faster, too fast. Her muscles responded with unnatural precision, the human DNA working with her Zerithian physiology in perfect sync. She twisted hard, firing the Viper's main cannons. Bright white plasma streaked through the void, impacting the nearest Krail fighter. The ship exploded in a shower of dark metal and green vapor. Ryan's voice crackled through the comm. "Nice shot." Silara's breathing quickened. Her mind was racing, calculating angles, adjusting for gravity shifts, predicting enemy maneuvers with terrifying accuracy. "She's in sync with the ship." Ellen's voice cut in over the channel. "Her neural activity is off the charts." Silara smiled. "Good." The second Krail fighter banked hard, firing a spread of torpedoes toward her. Silara's eyes narrowed. She fired a burst of countermeasures and accelerated into a tight spiral, cutting straight through the enemy fire. The torpedoes detonated behind her, scattering harmlessly into the void. Silara twisted the Viper around and fired again. 2 more Krail ships exploded in quick succession. 3 down, Ryan's voice said over the comm. "You're making this look easy." Silara's smile sharpened. "Because it is easy." The third Krail destroyer suddenly shifted position. A bright red beam of energy erupted from its central core, cutting across the void in a deadly sweep. Silara's eyes widened. The beam grazed the edge of her hull, alarms blaring through the cockpit. "Shields at 40%. Silara's gaze darkened. Enough of this. She angled the Viper toward the destroyer. Its weapons array was glowing, charging for another shot. Silara's heart hammered in her chest. The human instincts were screaming at her to survive, to destroy the threat at any cost. She fired her thrusters, rocketing toward the destroyer at full speed. "Silara, what are you doing?" Ryan's voice snapped through the comm. "Finishing this," Silara growled. She targeted the destroyer's core and fired a burst of proton torpedoes. The blue-white streaks of light raced toward the enemy ship. The Krail shields shimmered and held, but Silara was already moving. She accelerated toward the ship's underbelly, weaving through its defensive grid. Her reactions were too fast, too precise. The human DNA was pushing her beyond normal limits. She reached the ship's ventral exhaust port and fired her plasma cannons. The impact ruptured the core casing. The destroyer's hull buckled and thinned. Boom! A blinding flash of white light consumed the ship as it exploded from the inside out. Silara's Viper shot away from the debris field, engines burning bright. On the command deck, Ryan watched as the explosion faded into the darkness of space. The tactical grid blinked once, twice, then went quiet. "She did it," Ellen whispered. Ryan's gaze remained on the screen. "Open a channel." A moment later, Silara's face appeared on the holo display. Her skin glowed faintly beneath the dim cockpit lights, and her eyes were blazing with violet and gold. "Status?" Ryan asked. Silara smiled. "Operational." Ryan's smile was small and dangerous. Not bad for a first test. Silara's gaze narrowed. This wasn't a test. This was a warning. Ryan's eyes gleamed. "For them." Silara's smile sharpened. "For everyone." Silara stood at the edge of the viewport, the burning wreckage of the Krail destroyers drifting silently in the void beyond. The glow of dying embers reflected off the cold glass, flickering like ghosts in the dark. Her breathing was steady, but her mind raced with the weight of what she had done and what it meant. Behind her, the hiss of the sliding door signaled Ryan's arrival. His footsteps were sharp and measured as he approached. He stopped beside her, hands clasped behind his back. "Nice work out there," he said. His tone was light, but his eyes were serious. Silara's gaze didn't shift from the wreckage. It was necessary. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "That's not the point. The point is that you survived, that you fought back, and that you won." Zilara's hand curled into a fist at her side. The human instincts coursing through her still pulsed beneath her skin, a raw, electric energy that hadn't faded since the battle. Her muscles felt stronger, her mind sharper. But it wasn't just the power. It was the feeling that came with it. "Humans fight differently," she said quietly. "It's not just logic or tactics. It's instinct." Ryan finished. Silara's violet eyes flicked toward him. "And rage." Ryan smiled faintly. "Yeah, that too." A soft chime interrupted them. Ellen's voice filtered through the comm. "Captain, we've got an incoming transmission. Origin. Krail High Command." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Put it through." The viewport shimmered, and a holographic projection flickered into place. A tall Krail officer appeared, his dark armor etched with crimson markings of rank and honor. His pale face was set in a hard, emotionless mask. His deep-set black eyes narrowed at Ryan and Silara. "I am Commander Valak of the Krail High Council," he said. His voice was cold and precise. "We request a ceasefire." Ryan's brow lifted. "Ceasefire? That's rich. You just tried to blow us out of the sky." Valak's expression didn't shift. "And you destroyed 3 of our ships with a single fighter." His gaze turned toward Silara. "A fighter piloted by a hybrid." Silara's eyes hardened. "Is that a problem?" Valak's gaze sharpened. "It is unexpected." Ryan folded his arms. "So, you want to talk now that the odds aren't in your favor?" Valak's expression remained cold. "We want to understand how a Zerithian could wield human instincts so effectively. Your adaptability, your aggression, it makes you dangerous. To us, and to others." Silara's eyes darkened. "What are you offering?" Valak's gaze didn't waver. "A temporary alliance." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Why now?" Valak's gaze sharpened. "Because there are greater threats in this galaxy than the Krail or the Zerithians. And if that hybrid technology spreads..." Ryan's jaw tightened. "You think other species will come after us?" Valak's gaze didn't soften. "I know they will." Silara's expression remained still. The energy beneath her skin hummed, human rage mixing with Zerithian control. The Krail had mocked human reproduction. They had treated her like an experiment, a mistake. But now, they feared her. And fear was a powerful weapon. Silara stepped forward, her gaze cutting into Valak's. "If you want an alliance, there will be terms." Valak's dark eyes narrowed. "Name them." "First," Silara said, "you will stop hunting human colonies. Effective immediately." Valak's jaw tightened. "You ask much." "Second," Silara continued, "you will share your tactical data on all known galactic threats, including the ones you fear." Valak's mouth curled slightly. "And the third condition." Silara's violet and gold eyes glowed faintly. "You will kneel." Ryan's head turned sharply toward her. "Silara." Valak's gaze darkened. "Kneel? You mocked human strength," Silara said quietly. "You treated it like a weakness. Now you understand the truth." Valak's jaw worked silently. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, he lowered his head. "Agreed," Valak said. Silara's smile was faint. "Good." The transmission cut off, leaving only the burning wreckage of the destroyed Krail ships in the viewport. Silence stretched between them. Ryan exhaled. "I can't believe they folded that easily." "They didn't fold," Silara said. "They adapted." Ryan's eyes sharpened, like humans. Silara's gaze softened, like humans. A new alert sounded. Ellen's voice came through the comm. "Captain, we're receiving multiple subspace signals. It's a Krail fleet." Ryan's back straightened. "How many?" 20 warships, but they're not in attack formation." Silara's expression darkened. "They're coming to make good on the alliance." Ryan's brow furrowed. "Or to stab us in the back." Silara's gaze sharpened. "Let them try." The viewport flickered as the first Krail warships emerged from hyperspace. Their dark hulls gleamed in the starlight, weapons systems powered down. A show of trust, or a calculated opening. Ryan's gaze lingered on Silara. "So, what now?" Silara's violet and gold eyes gleamed. "Now we prepare." Ryan's smile was cold. "For what?" Silara's gaze burned. "War." She turned toward the command deck. The human DNA inside her pulsed with strength and clarity. The Krail had mocked humanity. Now they understood the truth. And soon, the rest of the galaxy would too. Ryan's gaze followed her as she stepped into the heart of the ship. Her figure was silhouetted against the cold light of the stars beyond. "You really think this alliance will last?" Ryan asked. Silara's smile was sharp. "For now. And after?" Silara's eyes narrowed. "After, we show the galaxy why humans are the most dangerous species alive." Silara stood at the edge of the viewport, the burning wreckage of the Krail destroyers drifting silently in the void beyond. The glow of dying embers reflected off the cold glass, flickering like ghosts in the dark. Her breathing was steady, but her mind raced with the weight of what she had done, and what it meant. Behind her, the hiss of the sliding door signaled Ryan's arrival. His footsteps were sharp and measured as he approached. He stopped beside her, hands clasped behind his back. "Nice work out there," he said. His tone was light, but his eyes were serious. Silara's gaze didn't shift from the wreckage. It was necessary. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "That's not the point. The point is that you survived, that you fought back, and that you won." Silara's hand curled into a fist at her side. The human instincts coursing through her still pulsed beneath her skin, a raw, electric energy that hadn't faded since the battle. Her muscles felt stronger, her mind sharper, but it wasn't just the power. It was the feeling that came with it. "Humans fight differently," she said quietly. "It's not just logic or tactics. It's instinct." Ryan finished. Silara's violet eyes flicked toward him. "And rage." Ryan smiled faintly. "Yeah, that too." A soft chime interrupted them. Ellen's voice filtered through the comm. "Captain, we've got an incoming transmission. Origin, Krail High Command." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Put it through." The viewport shimmered, and a holographic projection flickered into place. A tall Krail officer appeared, his dark armor etched with crimson markings of rank and honor. His pale face was set in a hard, emotionless mask. His deep-set black eyes narrowed at Ryan and Silara. "I am Commander Valak of the Krail High Council," he said. His voice was cold and precise. "We request a ceasefire." Ryan's brow lifted. "Ceasefire? That's rich. You just tried to blow us out of the sky." Valak's expression didn't shift. "And you destroyed 3 of our ships with a single fighter." His gaze turned toward Silara, a fighter piloted by a hybrid. Silara's eyes hardened. "Is that a problem?" Valak's gaze sharpened. "It is. Unexpected." Ryan folded his arms. "So you want to talk now that the odds aren't in your favor?" Valak's expression remained cold. "We want to understand how a Zerithian could wield human instincts so effectively. Your adaptability, your aggression, it makes you dangerous. To us, and to others." Silara's eyes darkened. "What are you offering?" Valak's gaze didn't waver. "A temporary alliance." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Why now?" Valak's gaze sharpened. "Because there are greater threats in this galaxy than the Krail or the Zerithians, and if that hybrid technology spreads." Ryan's jaw tightened. You think other species will come after us? Valak's gaze didn't soften. I know they will. Silara's expression remained still. The energy beneath her skin hummed, human rage mixing with Zerithian control. The Krail had mocked human reproduction. They had treated her like an experiment, a mistake. But now, they feared her, and fear was a powerful weapon. Silara stepped forward, her gaze cutting into Valak's. If you want an alliance, there will be terms. Valak's dark eyes narrowed. Name them. First, Silara said, you will stop hunting human colonies, effective immediately. Valak's jaw tightened. You ask much. Second, Silara continued, you will share your tactical data on all known galactic threats, including the ones you fear. Valak's mouth curled slightly. And the third condition. Silara's violet and gold eyes glowed faintly. You will kneel. Ryan's head turned sharply toward her. Silara. Valak's gaze darkened. Kneel? You mocked human strength. Silara said quietly. You treated it like a weakness. Now you understand the truth. Valak's jaw worked silently. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, he lowered his head. Agreed, Valak said. Silara's smile was faint. Good. The transmission cut off, leaving only the burning wreckage of the destroyed Krail ships in the viewport. Silence stretched between them. Ryan exhaled. I can't believe they folded that easily. They didn't fold, Silara said. They adapted. Ryan's eyes sharpened. Like humans. Silara's gaze softened. Like humans. A new alert sounded. Ellen's voice came through the comm. Captain, we're receiving multiple subspace signals. It's a Krail fleet. Ryan's back straightened. How many? 20 warships. But they're not in attack formation. Silara's expression darkened. They're coming to make good on the alliance. Ryan's brow furrowed. Or to stab us in the back. Silara's gaze sharpened. Let them try. The viewport flickered as the first Krail warships emerged from hyperspace. Their dark hulls gleamed in the starlight, weapons systems powered down. A show of trust, or a calculated opening. Ryan's gaze lingered on Silara. So, what now? Silara's violet and gold eyes gleamed. Now we prepare. Ryan's smile was cold. For what? Silara's gaze burned. War. She turned toward the command deck. The human DNA inside her pulsed with strength and clarity. The Krail had mocked humanity. Now they understood the truth. And soon, the rest of the galaxy would too. Ryan's gaze followed her as she stepped into the heart of the ship. Her figure was silhouetted against the cold light of the stars beyond. You really think this alliance will last? Ryan asked. Silara's smile was sharp. For now. And after. Silara's eyes narrowed. After, we show the galaxy why humans are the most dangerous species alive.